You want us to what now? Jack Harper stared at the holographic message floating above his desk, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. Ambassador Nixtara's six-eyed face rippled with what humans had learned was the Caldarian equivalent of a nervous smile. As I explained, Commander Harper, you and Captain Patel have been formally invited to represent humanity at the Galactic Council's quarterly summit. This is unprecedented. No species has ever been granted observer status so quickly after first contact. Jack took a long swig of coffee, making the ambassador's eye stalks twitch in horror. She'd once witnessed him drink the scalding liquid, and had thereafter classified coffee as weaponized chemical warfare that humans willingly ingest for pleasure. Yeah, that's what I thought you said, Jack muttered. But why us? Earth has actual diplomats. Politicians. People who don't accidentally offend aliens by breathing too aggressively. The door to his office slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Captain Meera Patel strode in, her uniform crisp despite having just finished a 5-mile morning run. Ambassador Nixtara, what a surprise, Meera said, wiping sweat from her brow. Sorry about my appearance. Just finished exercising. 3 of the ambassador's eyes swiveled toward Meera, while the other 3 remained fixed on Jack. You voluntarily exert yourself until your body produces toxins for enjoyment. It's called endorphins, Ambassador. Completely natural, Meera replied with a grin. So what brings you here? Jack gestured to the hologram. We've been invited to the Galactic Council meeting. As Earth representatives. Both of us? The Deathworlders? Meera laughed, using the term the galactic community had coined for humans within days of first contact. Well, that's just asking for trouble. The Council specifically requested you to, Nixtara said, her voice modulator barely concealing her distress. You were the first humans to make successful contact with multiple species. The Council believes you represent the most diplomatic specimens of your kind. Jack and Meera exchanged glances. The successful first contact Nixtara referred to had involved Jack punching a rogue Vrexian traitor who'd tried to kidnap Meera, followed by Meera hacking the alien ship systems with nothing but a modified smartphone and sheer stubbornness. Not exactly the stuff of diplomatic legend. Ambassador, Jack said slowly, you do remember that I'm the guy who accidentally caused a diplomatic incident by eating a sandwich during the Fraxian delegation's sacred hour of contemplation. And I'm the woman who sneezed during the treaty signing with the Helvari and was nearly shot as a biohazard. Meera added cheerfully. Nixtara's epidermis shifted to a pale blue. Anxiety, if Jack remembered his alien color coding correctly. The Council is aware of your unique qualities. That is precisely why they wish to observe you. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, you understand. Most Council members come from worlds where the most dangerous thing is seasonal pollen. Jack sighed. And they want to see the monsters up close, is that it? Not monsters. Nixtara's translator squeaked in alarm. Merely, fascinating evolutionary anomalies. Bipedal omnivores who evolved on a planet trying to kill them with everything from microscopic pathogens to massive predators to the very weather itself. Meera crossed her arms. So we're going to be the zoo exhibit. Fantastic. You will be honored guests, Nixtara insisted, though her color didn't change back to its normal purple. The Council ship arrives tomorrow, you have until then to prepare. After the ambassador's hologram winked out, Jack and Meera stood in silence for a moment. Well, Jack finally said, draining the last of his coffee, guess we're going to Space Congress. Should I pack my hazmat suit? Meera asked, just to make them comfortable. Jack snorted. Forget the hazmat suit. Just promise me you won't tell anyone about the time you killed that snake with your bare hands. Or mention skydiving. Or hot sauce. Actually, maybe just don't talk at all. Look who's talking, mister. I can hold my breath for 4 minutes, Meera shot back. Just remember, these aliens think we're terrifying apex predators from a nightmare planet. We are terrifying apex predators from a nightmare planet, Jack pointed out. By their standards anyway. Meera's expression turned sly. Should we live up to the reputation, or try to convince them we're harmless? Knowing our luck, Jack grimaced. We'll end up doing both, and somehow make it worse. The diplomatic vessel that arrived to transport Earth's representatives was called the Harmonious Convergence, a name that Jack immediately decided was overly optimistic for any ship carrying humans to an alien council meeting. It's surprisingly roomy, Meera commented as they boarded, dragging a modest suitcase behind her. After much debate, they'd both opted for their formal military dress uniforms, reasoning that looking sharp and official might offset whatever accidental chaos they were bound to create. Their escort, A slender being with translucent skin named Protocol Officer Elgin, twitched visibly when Jack's boots made a heavy thud on the metallic deck. "Please," Elgin whispered, vocal sacs pulsating beneath their jaw, "tread lightly. The ship's nervous system is quite sensitive." "The ship has a nervous system?" Jack asked, immediately lightening his step. "Of course," Elgin replied, as though explaining to a child. "All Council vessels are semi-sentient bioengineered constructs. They respond to emotional states and physical inputs." Mira shot Jack a warning glance that clearly communicated, "Don't you dare make a joke about riding inside a living being." Jack bit his tongue. Their quarters were adjacent compartments designed for oxygen-dependent bipeds, which meant they were only mildly uncomfortable, rather than completely uninhabitable. The gravity was set at about 0.8 Earth normal, making Jack feel like he could bound down the corridors like a gazelle if he weren't concentrating on appearing non-threatening. "Meal service will commence in one standard cycle," Elgin informed them. "We have attempted to synthesize appropriate nutrition for your species. Please inform me if the offerings cause any digestive distress." After Elgin departed with a bow that seemed part politeness, part relief to be escaping their presence, Jack flopped onto his bed and activated the comlink to Mira's room. 10 credits says dinner's going to be algae paste, he wagered. Mira's laugh came through the speaker. "No bet. Did you see how Elgin kept staring at your teeth when you smiled? I thought they were going to faint." "Can't help having omnivore dentition," Jack replied, running his tongue over his canines. "Maybe I should just keep my mouth shut during the council meeting. Both of us, silent for 3 days. That'll be the day." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime, followed by an announcement in the oddly musical language of the Galactic Standard, immediately translated by their neural implants. "All sentients, please secure yourselves for fold space transition. Dimensional stability cannot be guaranteed for unrestrained biological matter." "Well, that sounds ominous," Mira muttered. "Welcome to space travel," Jack replied, strapping himself to the bed as instructed. "Try not to think about your atoms being disassembled and reassembled." Too late. The transition was mercifully brief. A moment of impossible pressure, a flash of colors that didn't exist in human visual range yet somehow their brains perceived them anyway. And then normality resumed with only a mild sense of having been turned inside out and back again. When Jack met Mira in the corridor afterward, her complexion had taken on a greenish tinge that clashed with her dark skin. "You okay there, Captain?" he asked. "Fine," she replied, swallowing hard. "Just wondering if my organs are all back where they belong." Dinner turned out to be not algae paste but something infinitely worse, textureless cubes of protein that tasted vaguely of wet cardboard with a hint of cinnamon. They sat at a large circular table, alongside 5 other council delegates, who had hitched a ride on the diplomatic vessel. "Is the nutrient substrate acceptable?" asked Delegate Forum, a feathered reptilian with elaborate head plumage. "We understood humans require high protein content." "It's adequate," Jack managed, forcing himself to take another bite. "Thank you for accommodating our dietary needs." Mira, showing off the iron stomach that had made her legendary during survival training, was steadily working through her portion with mechanical efficiency. "Do humans truly consume plant matter as well as animal proteins?" inquired another delegate, a hovering gelatinous sphere named Wobble, the closest their translators could come to the being's actual name, which involved subtle vibrations. "We're omnivores," Mira explained. "We can eat almost anything organic, and some things that technically aren't food at all." The liquid inside Wobble sloshed violently. Clarification requested. "You consume non-nutritive materials." Jack thought about college students and Tide Pods and decided some cultural aspects were best left unexplained. "Only in emergencies," he lied smoothly. "Your species evolved on a planet with frequent food scarcity?" asked Delegate Zarel, who resembled nothing so much as an ambulatory fern with eyes. "Not exactly," Mira said. "Earth has abundant food sources, but they're often trying to avoid being eaten, sometimes by being poisonous or fighting back. So you evolved to consume toxic materials." Wobble's translucent body darkened several shades. "Within reason," Jack clarified quickly. "We can't eat everything, just more than most species, apparently." The delegates exchanged what Jack could only interpret as horrified glances. "And you say your planet has approximately 70% water coverage?" Forum asked, changing the subject with transparent desperation. "That's right," Mira confirmed. "Most of it's ocean, yet you cannot respire in liquid environments." Zarel's fronds quivered. "We can hold our breath for several minutes," Jack offered, immediately regretting it when Wobble's entire body went rigid. "Without oxygen," the gelatinous delegate burbled in alarm. No, no, Mira interjected. We just store some in our lungs temporarily. This did not seem to reassure the aliens. Your species willingly submerges in vast bodies of water without respiratory adaptation for recreation. Florum's plumage flattened against their skull. Jack suddenly realized why the aliens found this so disturbing. Your homeworlds don't have large bodies of water, do they? Only the most primitive and dangerous planets maintain exposed liquid water, Wobble explained, still visibly agitated. The evolutionary pressure is too extreme. Ah. Jack nodded, feeling like he was finally understanding something. That would explain why you call Earth a death world. One of many reasons. Zrel's translator conveyed with a tone of reverence mingled with terror. The remainder of the meal passed in awkward conversation punctuated by long silences. Jack caught Mira's eye across the table, and saw his own thought reflected there. This council meeting was going to be even more uncomfortable than they'd anticipated. The Galactic Council headquarters wasn't a planet, a space station, or even a ship. It was all three combined, if you squinted and tilted your head just right. The massive structure hung in space like an impossible geometric puzzle, sections rotating in different directions around a gleaming central sphere. Welcome to the Nexus, Protocol Officer Elgin announced as the view screen displayed their approach. The meeting place of the 527 member species of the Galactic Cooperative. 528 now, I guess. Jack murmured, trying not to look impressed and failing spectacularly. Not yet, Elgin corrected. Earth currently holds observer status only. Full membership requires unanimous approval after a probationary period of no less than 3 standard cycles. 3 years, Mira asked. 3 galactic cycles, Elgin clarified. Approximately 72 Earth years. Jack and Mira exchanged glances. Earth governments changed every few years. Maintaining consistent policy for 7 decades would be a diplomatic miracle. Don't worry, Jack said dryly. We'll be on our best behavior. Probation will fly by. Something that might have been a smirk crossed Elgin's translucent features. Indeed, the docking procedure took nearly an hour, a complex dance of gravitational adjustments and atmospheric synchronization. By the time they were cleared to disembark, Jack's patience was wearing thin. Remember, Mira whispered as they prepared to step through the airlock. No sudden movements, no showing teeth, and for the love of God don't sneeze. You're the one with allergies, Jack reminded her. Which is why I took enough antihistamines to tranquilize a horse. The air that greeted them had a distinctly artificial quality, sterile and precisely calibrated to accommodate the maximum number of species without causing respiratory distress to any. It tasted like hospital waiting rooms and committee meetings, Jack thought. The essence of bureaucracy distilled into an atmosphere. A delegation awaited them in the arrival chamber, a semicircle of beings so diverse that Jack's brain struggled to categorize them all. Some had too many limbs, others too few. Some floated, some crawled, and at least one appeared to be periodically phasing in and out of visible reality. At the center stood a tall willowy figure with midnight blue skin and eyes that reflected light like polished silver. Unlike the other aliens, this one wore clothing, an elaborate robe embroidered with what looked like mathematical equations. Commander Harper, Captain Patel, the figure intoned in a voice like distant wind chimes. I am Council President Voxtrill. We welcome Earth's representatives to the Nexus. Jack and Mira executed carefully practiced bows, keeping their hands visible and their expressions neutral. We're honored by the invitation, President Voxtrill. Mira responded formally. Indeed, Jack added. Earth appreciates the opportunity to observe the council proceedings. A ripple of movement passed through the assembled aliens, what Jack had come to recognize as their equivalent of murmuring. Several recording devices hovered at discrete distances, capturing the historic meeting. You have traveled far from your death world, Voxtrill continued. We have prepared accommodations that should approximate your natural habitat, though we could not, of course, include the numerous hazards your species evolved alongside. That's thoughtful, Jack managed, wondering what exactly they'd find in their quarters. A simulation of Earth minus everything interesting. A small round alien with metallic scales rolled forward. Are your gravity compensators functioning adequately? Our records indicate Earth has barbaric gravitational conditions. Before Jack could answer, another delegate spoke up, this one resembling an upright octopus with luminescent patches. Have they been sterilized? Deathworld microbiomes are notorious incubators for pathogens. We underwent full decontamination protocols before departure. Mira assured them, her smile carefully closed-lipped. Even so, the octopoid continued, tentacles writhing nervously. Perhaps additional quarantine would be prudent. Voxtrill made a graceful gesture that silenced the concerned murmurs. Our human guests have complied with all safety procedures. They are here at our invitation and will be accorded all diplomatic courtesies. Jack noticed that despite the president's diplomatic words, Vox Trill maintained a precise 2-meter distance from them at all times. The council session begins tomorrow, the president continued. Today, you are invited to the welcoming reception, where you may meet representatives from various member worlds. Like a diplomatic mixer? Mira asked. Vox Trill's silver eyes blinked slowly. I am unfamiliar with this term. A social gathering to facilitate introductions, Jack clarified. Yes, precisely, Vox Trill confirmed. Though I must advise you that many species will be encountering humans for the first time. Some trepidation is to be expected. We're used to it, Jack assured them, trying not to sound resigned. Their quarters in the visitors' wing were surprisingly comfortable. Earth normal gravity, temperature and humidity. The beds were actually beds, not the suspension fields or nutrient baths that some species preferred. There was even a crude attempt at Earth decor. Potted plants safely behind containment fields and wall projections showing Earth landscapes. Better than I expected, Mira admitted, bouncing experimentally on her bed. At least they didn't put us in a terrarium. Don't give them ideas, Jack warned, inspecting the bathroom facilities with relief. The reception starts in 2 hours. That gives us time to review the diplomatic briefings one more time. We've memorized them already, Mira groaned, falling back onto the mattress. No physical contact with Pelorians because they're touch telepaths. Don't mention binary star systems around the duality because it's religiously offensive. No sudden movements near the Vex because they perceive rapid motion as aggression. And no eating in front of anyone, unless they eat first, Jack added, since half the council thinks we might try to devour them. This is going to be a disaster, isn't it? Mira stared at the ceiling. Probably, Jack agreed cheerfully. But hey, maybe they'll be so terrified of us that they'll give Earth whatever we want just to make us go away. That's not how diplomacy works, Jack. Says who? We're in uncharted territory here. For all we know, being scary Deathworlders might be the best diplomatic strategy Earth has. 3 hours later, standing rigidly in a vast chamber filled with hundreds of alien diplomats who kept shooting them nervous glances, Jack was reconsidering his position on the advantages of being feared. The reception was a symphony of awkwardness. Despite Vox Trill's formal introduction, most delegates maintained a conspicuous bubble of empty space around the humans. Conversations halted when Jack or Mira approached, only to resume in hushed tones after they passed. I feel like I have the plague, Mira muttered through a fixed smile. More like we are the plague, Jack replied quietly, nodding politely to a group of delegates who promptly scattered like startled birds. Only a few braver souls approached them directly. A delegation from a high-gravity world called Denstron seemed particularly interested, perhaps recognizing kindred spirits and fellow extreme environment dwellers. Is it true? Asked Ambassador Krug, a squat, heavily muscled being with stone-like skin, that humans intentionally expose themselves to solar radiation for cosmetic purposes. Tanning. Yeah, some of us do, Jack confirmed. Though it's not considered very healthy these days. Fascinating, Krug rumbled. On Denstron, direct sunlight would vaporize surface water within moments. Different evolutionary pressures, Mira offered diplomatically. Indeed, your species is remarkably adaptable. The word sounded like a compliment but felt like something else entirely. As the reception wore on, Jack noticed Vox Trill engaged in intense conversation with several senior council members, all of them shooting occasional glances toward the humans. We're being talked about, he murmured to Mira. Tell me something I don't know, she replied, taking a careful sip from a beverage that had been specifically synthesized to be non-toxic to humans. It tasted like mint-flavored dishwater. No, I mean officially talked about. Look at the president's body language. Mira followed his gaze. Think they're regretting the invitation, or plotting how to study us without being too obvious about it. The evening dragged on in a haze of strained small talk and uncomfortable silences until, mercifully, Vox Trill announced the conclusion of the reception. Tomorrow, the real test would begin, the formal council session where Earth's case for observer status would be presented, discussed, and inevitably picked apart. As they returned to their quarters, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by more than just the visible security systems. Well, he said as they reached their rooms, that went about as well as could be expected. No diplomatic incidents, no one fainted when you smiled too widely, and I didn't sneeze once, Mira agreed. By our standards, that's practically a triumph. Jack laughed. Just wait until tomorrow, when they see us in action. He had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. The main council chamber resembled nothing so much as an enormous opera house designed by someone with a severe geometry obsession. Tiered seating encircled a central platform, with each section customized for different physiological needs: aquatic environments for water breathers, low-gravity bubbles for species from lighter worlds, and what appeared to be actual flames contained in transparent cases for beings composed primarily of plasma. Jack and Mira were escorted to the observer section, a neutral zone with adaptable seating near the chamber's rear. From there they had an excellent view of the proceedings while remaining safely distant from most delegates. "Remember," whispered their handler, a nervous protocol officer named Linth who had replaced Elgin for the day, "observers may be recognized to speak only if directly addressed by the council president. Otherwise, complete silence is expected." "Got it," Jack confirmed. "We'll be like statues." "Statues don't typically cause interstellar incidents," Mira murmured under her breath. The session began with ceremonial formalities, a series of tones that their translators informed them was the Galactic anthem, followed by what Jack could only describe as interpretive light dancing performed by a group of energy beings. Then came the procedural matters, reports from various committees, updates on trade disputes, and monitoring of developing civilizations approaching technological thresholds for contact. Jack found himself fascinated despite the dry delivery. This was the machinery of interstellar governance in action, the system that had apparently maintained relative peace among hundreds of species for millennia. The humans' presence wasn't acknowledged until nearly 2 hours into the proceedings, when Vox Trill finally turned those mercury eyes toward their section. "The Council now recognizes the representatives from Sol 3, designated Earth, present in observational capacity per Protocol 7 Delta 9. A ripple of movement passed through the chamber as hundreds of delegates turned to stare at them. Jack and Mira rose and executed the formal bow they'd practiced. "Earth thanks the Council for this honor," Mira stated, her voice clear and confident. And that's when it happened. Perhaps it was the sterile recycled air, or the stress of being under constant alien scrutiny, or simply bad timing, but Mira's carefully suppressed allergies chose that exact moment to override her medication. The sneeze was, by human standards, entirely ordinary, a reflexive expulsion of air to clear irritants from the nasal passage. By alien standards, it was apparently akin to detonating a small bomb. Pandemonium erupted throughout the chamber. Delegates from the nearest sections physically recoiled. Several aquatic species submerged completely in their tanks. One anti-gravity bubble engaged emergency propulsion, sending its occupant careening into the ceiling. "Containment breach," shrieked someone's translator. "Biological contaminant detected." Yellow warning lights began pulsing throughout the chamber. A thin mist descended from overhead, some kind of disinfectant that made Jack's eyes water. "I'm so sorry," Mira managed, mortified. "It was just a sneeze. A normal human respiratory function." Vox Trill, to their credit, maintained remarkable composure. "Please remain calm, honored delegates. Our medical systems have already neutralized any potential pathogens." "You invited Deathworlders into the sacred chamber," accused a tall skeletal being with too many joints. "They exhale microorganisms with every breath." Actually, Jack couldn't stop himself from interjecting. "All species with respiratory systems exhale microorganisms. It's just basic biology." This was apparently exactly the wrong thing to say. The chamber erupted in fresh alarm. "They admit to being biological weapons," cried a floating crystalline creature, its facets flashing with distress patterns. "That's not what Jack began, but Vox Trill cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Order. The Council will maintain order." The President's voice reverberated through the chamber with unexpected authority. "The human delegates are here under diplomatic protection. They have undergone all required decontamination procedures." Gradually, the chaos subsided to a low murmur of discontent. Jack caught Mira's eye, and saw his own mixture of embarrassment and amusement reflected there. Not even 3 hours into the session, and they'd already caused an interstellar incident with a sneeze. Once relative calm had been restored, Vox Trill addressed them directly. "Perhaps, honored observers, you might share some information about your species to alleviate concerns. Many council members have limited knowledge of humans beyond your classification as Deathworlders." It was clearly damage control, but Jack recognized the opportunity. He stepped forward slightly. "Thank you, President Vox Trill. Earth has only recently achieved the technological capability for interstellar communication and travel. We're eager to learn from the galactic community, and share our own unique perspectives." So far so diplomatic. Jack was starting to think they might salvage the situation when a delegate from the Oceanic section raised a flipper-like appendage. "Query for the Earth delegates," the being's translator rendered in slightly bubbling tones. "Our research indicates humans routinely consume neurotoxins for pleasure. Is this accurate?" Jack blinked. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Caffeine," Mira whispered. "They're talking about coffee." "Ah." Jack nodded. Yes, many humans consume caffeine, which is technically a mild neurotoxin by some definitions. It's completely safe for us in moderate quantities. This prompted another delegate to speak up. And is it also true that humans intentionally consume capsaicin compounds that cause pain receptors to fire? You mean spicy food? Mira asked. Yes, many Earth cultures enjoy spicy cuisine. The sensation is stimulating rather than truly painful for most of us. The chamber had gone eerily quiet now, every being fixated on the humans with what Jack could only interpret as horrified fascination. What about your recreational activities? Asked a delegate with multiple eye stalks. Our preliminary research indicates humans voluntarily jump from high altitudes with only fabric devices to slow their descent. Skydiving, Jack confirmed. Or parachuting. It's considered an extreme sport, not a common activity. And some humans swim in large bodies of water where predatory species are known to hunt. Continued the delegate. Well, shark attacks are actually extremely rare. Mira began. You share your planet with predators capable of consuming you, and you enter their territory willingly. Interrupted a small furry delegate, voice squeaking with disbelief. Jack sighed. This was rapidly spiraling out of control. Earth has many environments, some more challenging than others, he tried to explain. Humans have adapted to navigate these environments safely. What might seem dangerous to other species is often quite manageable with proper precautions. They consider apex predators manageable. Someone muttered loudly enough for the translators to pick up. Vox Trill intervened again. Let us remember that different evolutionary paths create different capabilities and perceptions of risk. The human's adaptability is precisely why their perspective may be valuable to the Council in certain matters. Such as what? Demanded the skeletal delegate who had spoken earlier. How to survive on planets that actively try to kill you. Actually, Mira said with poorly concealed irritation, that might be exactly the kind of knowledge worth sharing. The galaxy isn't uniformly hospitable. Surely there are frontier worlds or emergency situations where survival skills developed on a death world could prove useful. A thoughtful silence followed her words. Jack could almost see the mental calculations happening throughout the chamber, weighing the potential benefits of human knowledge against the perceived risks of closer association with Deathworlders. The tension was broken by an unexpected source, the Denstron ambassador they'd met at the reception. The human delegates make a valid point, Krug's gravelly voice announced. Those of us from challenging environments possess perspectives that more sheltered species might find valuable in exceptional circumstances. Jack shot the rocky ambassador a grateful look, recognizing an ally when he saw one. Perhaps, Vox Trill suggested smoothly, we might continue with our scheduled agenda and return to these fascinating cultural exchanges during the designated intermission period. Mira nodded eagerly. An excellent suggestion, President. As the council returned to its procedural matters, Jack leaned close to Mira. That could have gone worse, he whispered. Don't jinx it, she murmured back. We still have 2 more days of this. Neither of them realized that the true test of galactic diplomacy was yet to come. The emergency klaxon shattered the monotony of budget appropriations discussions sometime after midday. Red lights pulsed throughout the chamber as a computerized voice announced something in Galactic Standard too rapid for the translators to process properly. What's happening? Jack asked their handler Linth, who had gone from merely nervous to actively quivering. Environmental systems malfunction, Linth whispered, compound eyes darting around the chamber. The atmosphere mix in Section 12 is destabilizing. Jack looked where Linth indicated. Section 12 contained a delegation of insectoid beings, whose environmental requirements included a precise mixture of methane and other gases that would be toxic to most oxygen breathers. Now, the transparent barrier separating their section from the main chamber showed hairline fractures spreading like spider webs. If that containment field fails, Mira began. Evacuation protocols initiated, announced the chamber's automated system. All delegates please proceed to designated safety zones. What followed looked less like an orderly evacuation and more like a stampede, filtered through the lens of interstellar diversity. Floating delegates shot upward. Aquatic species sloshed frantically in their portable environments, and various limbed creatures scrambled over and around each other toward the exits. Should we? Jack started to ask, but Mira was already on her feet, her military training kicking in. Those insectoids can't evacuate, she said, pointing to Section 12. If their environmental chamber breaks and they're exposed to our atmosphere, they die. Jack finished grimly. And if their atmosphere leaks into the main chamber, a lot of other delegates could be in trouble too, Mira concluded. They looked at each other for exactly 1 second before moving in unison toward the endangered section, ignoring Lint's horrified squeal. "What do you think you're doing?" demanded a security officer, a bulky quadruped with natural armor plating, blocking their path. "We have atmospheric filtration implants," Jack lied smoothly. "Standard issue for Deathworld species. We can get close enough to engage the manual containment override." The security officer hesitated just long enough for Mira to duck past and sprint towards Section 12. Jack followed, silently blessing the lower-than-Earth normal gravity that made their movements appear almost supernaturally quick and agile to the watching aliens. The reality was far less heroic than it looked. Neither of them had filtration implants. Those didn't exist on Earth, but they did have military training that included operating in hazardous environments. If they could hold their breath long enough to reach the control panel, Mira reached the environmental controls first, just as the first significant crack appeared in the barrier. Methane-rich gas began seeping into the main chamber, creating a visible blue haze. The insectoid delegates inside were clearly panicking, mandibles clicking frantically as they realized their predicament. Jack felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to find Vox Trill, who had apparently followed them instead of evacuating. "The emergency override requires biometric authorization," the council president explained, voice artificially calm. "I can provide it, but the panel interface is already failing," Jack noted, seeing the sparks shooting from the damaged control system. "We'll need to manually rewire it." Without waiting for permission, he yanked off the panel cover, revealing a complex array of circuitry that looked nothing like Earth technology. He shot a questioning look at Vox Trill, the primary routing node. The president indicated a crystalline component near the center, must connect to the emergency backup system there. They pointed to what looked like a biological interface, something organic merged with technology. "Got it," Jack said, taking a deep breath and holding it as the methane concentration increased around them. His eyes were already stinging. Mira had moved to help evacuate the insectoid delegates through a secondary airlock, communicating through gestures since their translators weren't designed for the species' complex clicking language. Remarkably, the aliens were following her directions, perhaps too desperate to question the help of a Deathworlder. Jack's fingers worked quickly, rerouting connections based on Vox Trill's hurried instructions. The task would have been challenging enough without the toxic atmosphere burning his lungs and the steadily mounting pressure behind the cracking barrier. Almost there, he managed through gritted teeth, connecting the final circuit. The effect was immediate. Secondary containment fields shimmered into existence, halting the methane leak while emergency ventilation systems activated, cycling the contaminated air out of the chamber. Jack finally allowed himself to exhale, gulping in the gradually clearing air. His vision swam for a moment before stabilizing. That, Vox Trill observed with what sounded suspiciously like awe, was not what our security protocols recommended. "What did they recommend?" Jack asked, still catching his breath. "Full chamber evacuation and remote re-establishment of containment once all standard atmosphere delegates were clear," Vox Trill explained. "The insectoid delegation would likely have perished." "That wasn't an option," Jack stated simply. Across the chamber, Mira had successfully guided the last of the insectoid delegates through the emergency airlock. She jogged back toward them, looking only slightly worse for wear. "Everyone accounted for," she reported crisply. "Though I think I may have violated about 12 diplomatic protocols by physically touching ambassadors during the evacuation. Under the circumstances, I believe exceptions can be made," Vox Trill assured her. It was only then that Jack realized the chamber wasn't completely empty. A significant number of delegates had remained at the chamber's perimeter, watching the humans' actions with what could only be described as stunned disbelief. "Did all of you just," Jack looked around at the observers. "Did you stay to watch us?" "Your response was unexpected," explained one of the floating crystalline beings. "Humans deliberately exposed themselves to toxic atmosphere to assist others." "Of course we did," Mira said, confused. "Anyone would have done the same." A ripple of what might have been laughter, or its alien equivalent, passed through the watching delegates. "No, Captain Patel," Vox Trill corrected gently. "Most species would not have, could not have. The typical response to environmental hazards is immediate self-preservation. But the insectoids would have died," Jack protested. "Yes," agreed Vox Trill. "That would have been regrettable but accepted as an unfortunate consequence of the mechanical failure." Jack and Mira exchanged horrified glances, suddenly understanding something fundamental about galactic culture. "On Earth," Mira explained carefully, "we have a concept called no one left behind. It's particularly strong in military and emergency services. You risk multiple lives to save few, asked one of the delegates, clearly struggling with the concept. Sometimes, Jack confirmed. It depends on the situation, but yes, humans often take significant risks to save others, even strangers. Is this because your Deathworld environment requires cooperative survival strategies? Inquired another delegate with apparent scientific curiosity. Jack started to answer, but was interrupted by an ululating cry from the far side of the chamber. The insectoid delegation had returned through a different entrance, and their leader approached, flanked by two others. What followed was an elaborate series of movements, mandibles clicking, limbs gesturing in precise patterns, that even the advanced translators struggled to interpret. The general meaning, however, was clear, a formal and deeply significant expression of gratitude. The Etkatari pledged their support to Earth's observer status application. Vox Trill, translated, when the display concluded. This is unprecedented. The Etkatari have not aligned with any new species in over 300 cycles. Jack and Mira stood awkwardly, as the insectoid delegates performed one final gesture, something that looked uncomfortably like bowing, before retreating to their newly stabilized environmental section. Well, Jack said, inadequately, glad we could help. Indeed, Vox Trill's silver eyes studied them with new intensity. Perhaps we have underestimated what Deathworlders might contribute to the galactic community. As the rest of the delegates filtered back into the chamber, Jack caught snippets of conversations their translators rendered imperfectly. Moved so quickly, did you see, breathed toxic gas and continued functioning. Physically carried Ambassador Tuk-Tuk-Tuk despite the thoracic spines. Not what we were told about predator species behavior. Mira leaned close to Jack. I think we just became celebrities, she whispered. Great, he muttered back. Just what we needed, more attention. But as they returned to their observation section, now flanked by security officers, who seemed more like an honor guard than wary minders, Jack couldn't help feeling they'd somehow stumbled into accomplishing precisely what they'd been sent to do. Demonstrate that humans, despite their Deathworld origins, could be valuable members of the galactic community. All it had taken was a life-threatening emergency, and some foolhardy heroics. Typical human diplomacy, really. News of the incident, as it was now being called throughout the Nexus, spread faster than a viral cat video on Earth's internet. By the time the day's session formally adjourned, Jack and Mira found themselves the reluctant center of attention in a way neither had anticipated. I always thought first contact scenarios would involve more formal dinners and fewer toxic gas leaks, Jack commented as they made their way back to their quarters, trailed by a small flotilla of recording devices and curious delegates at a respectful distance. Honestly, I'm just glad we didn't make things worse, Mira replied under her breath. Though I'm pretty sure I inhaled enough methane to kill a small horse. Medical evaluation is recommended, advised Linth, who had recovered from earlier shock and was now hovering protectively near them. Deathworlders or not, methane exposure is inadvisable. We're fine, Jack assured the protocol officer. Human lungs are pretty resilient, we just need some rest. What they got instead was a formal invitation to meet with the Council's inner circle, the executive committee composed of the 5 most influential species in the cooperative. The message arrived minutes after they reached their quarters, leaving them barely enough time to freshen up before being escorted to a chamber they hadn't visited before. The inner circle meeting room was smaller and more intimate than the main council chamber. The lighting was subdued, and the furnishings suggested serious business rather than ceremonial proceedings. Vox Trill was there, along with representatives from 4 other species, each occupying seating arrangements suited to their particular physiologies. Commander Harper, Captain Patel, Vox Trill greeted them. Please be seated. The chairs provided for them were actually comfortable this time, a marked improvement over the observation section's utilitarian seating. We have been discussing today's events, began a massive entity composed of what appeared to be living stone, whom Jack recognized as the representative from a species called the monoliths. Your actions were unexpected. As we've been told, Jack replied diplomatically. What our colleague means, clarified a delicate insect-like being with translucent wings, is that they cast your species in a light we had not previously considered. Mira straightened in her chair. With respect, what exactly did you expect from us? The delegates exchanged glances, or whatever passed for glances among species with such diverse sensory organs. The typical evolutionary path for predator species from high-stress environments results in strongly individualistic survival instincts, explained the winged being. The documented behaviors of other Deathworld species suggested humans would be aggressive, territorial, and primarily self-preserving. We can be all those things, Jack admitted, but we're also social creatures. Cooperation is how we survived our Deathworld in the first place. Precisely the paradox that intrigues us, Vox Trill interjected. You exhibit predatory traits, enhanced physical capabilities, omnivorous adaptation, aggressive problem-solving, yet simultaneously demonstrate altruistic behaviors, typically found only in highly specialized eusocial species. We contain multitudes, Mira said with a slight smile, the humor apparently translated, as several of the delegates made sounds their translators did not attempt to interpret. The Council has accelerated its review of Earth's observer status application, announced the fourth delegate, a being composed primarily of swirling gases contained within an environmental suit. Today's events have provided compelling evidence of your species' potential value to the cooperative. That's good news, Jack said cautiously. There is another matter, Vox Trill continued. The Akatari delegation has formally requested that Earth be considered for a role we had not previously contemplated. Jack and Mira exchanged worried glances. What kind of role? Mira asked. The Galactic Cooperative maintains a specialized division for handling extreme environmental situations, emergency responses, and high-risk diplomatic missions, explained the gaseous delegate. It is traditionally staffed by species from challenging worlds, but has been undermanned for several cycles. You want humans to be your emergency responders? Jack asked incredulously. Based on one incident, based on observed capabilities, corrected the monolith representative. Your physiological resilience, problem-solving under pressure and willingness to accept personal risk for collective benefit are precisely the qualities required. Not to mention, added the fifth delegate, who resembled nothing so much as an evolved cephalopod, that humans appear to actively enjoy challenge and danger, if our research is accurate. Most member species find such environments severely distressing. Mira leaned forward, her expression serious. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Not all humans are like Jack and me. We're military personnel with specialized training. The average human doesn't routinely run into toxic environments or handle crisis situations. Yet your entertainment media suggests otherwise, argued the winged delegate. Our cultural analysts report that humans consume stories about disaster, danger, and heroism as recreational content. That's fiction, Jack explained, feeling increasingly surreal. Most humans lead peaceful, ordinary lives, while fantasizing about extraordinary circumstances, countered Vox Trill with something that might have been amusement. Your species is fascinating. Look, Jack said firmly, we're flattered by the offer, but we're not authorized to commit Earth to any specific role in the cooperative. We're just observers. Of course, Vox Trill acknowledged. This is merely a preliminary discussion. The formal proposal will be presented to your planetary government through appropriate channels. And in the meantime, Mira asked suspiciously. In the meantime, said the cephalopod delegate, your observer status has been unanimously approved, effective immediately. Earth is now formally recognized by the Galactic Cooperative. That's fantastic, Jack managed, genuinely surprised. Thank you. Do not thank us yet, Commander Harper. Vox Trill replied with what definitely seemed like humor. The administrative requirements for new observer species are quite extensive. Your diplomatic corps will be processing documentation for months. Bureaucracy. Mira sighed. Truly the one universal constant. This elicited actual laughter, or various species equivalents from the delegates. As they left the meeting, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they'd accomplished something significant, if not quite what they'd been sent to do. Earth had gained observer status and apparently the respect of several key council members, all through a combination of accident, reflex, and what amounted to basic human decency. So, Mira said as they walked back to their quarters for the last time, their departure scheduled for the following day, how do we explain this in our report? Dear Earth governments, Jack began in a mock official tone. We sneezed, fixed a leak, carried some bug people to safety, and now the galaxy wants us to be their emergency response team. Also, we're officially part of the Space Club now. You're welcome, Mira laughed. I'm sure that will go over well with the diplomats. They wanted to send typical humans, right? Well, they got typical human results. Good intentions, blind panic, and somehow stumbling into a solution that works despite everything. You know what's funny? Mira said, pausing outside her door. After all that talk about how dangerous we are, it turns out what scares them most is the fact that we care. Deathworlders with hearts of gold, Jack agreed. Who knew that was our superpower? Just wait until they find out about our other bizarre habits, Mira said with a grin. I can't wait to see their reaction when they discover humans voluntarily eat extremely hot peppers for fun. Or that we keep apex predators in our homes and call them good boys, Jack added. Maybe we should wait until they've processed the full observer status paperwork before we mention that, Mira suggested. Agreed, Jack said, offering his hand for their traditional handshake. To successful first contact, such as it was, Mira completed, clasping his hand firmly. Somewhere in the vast complex of the Nexus, Jack was certain that alien cultural analysts were already adding this strange human greeting ritual to their growing file of terrifying Deathworlder behaviors, right alongside sneezing, drinking coffee, and the truly unsettling human tendency to risk their lives for strangers. And somehow, he couldn't bring himself to care. The galaxy would just have to get used to humans, one diplomatic incident at a time.